right. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Bhagavad Guru Srila Prabhupada. All glories to our revered speaker for today, His Grace PALAKA Prabhu, and all glories to the Servant Vaishnavi devotees. Today is the 10th of September 2025. It's interesting. The year is almost over.
Can't believe it.
Yeah, it is. It is a very great privilege. We have His Grace PALAKA Prabhu with us today. If PALAKA Prabhu were a cow, a milking cow, then today we're going to milk him so much that he will leave here with no milk left in his udder. Because it's kind of very, very difficult to get hold of. So, Prabhuji, see, Hare Krishna Africa is very grateful to have the association. And of course, you've been here a couple times, so nothing changed. Srila Prabhupada just finished chanting the Jai Radha Madhava. So most of the time we just go by Srila Prabhupada chanting. Some devotees also like to chant. If you decide to do that, that is also permissible. Otherwise, we go by Srila Prabhupada's Jai Radha Madhava. We put the verse on the screen. You speak, and then if there is some time, devotees may want to ask some questions or share some reflections. And I believe we have 2 verses to cover today.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to put the verse on the screen, and we're going to give you the rights in case you may want to share something from your end. You may be able to do that also. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for everybody who is on this call and listening to this on YouTube. Naturally, I'm asking for everyone's blessings to share something that could be beneficial in their journey towards Krishna Prema and serving their gurus, serving their purpose, their dharma, while they are in this journey of human life. I will. I'll skip the kirtan today since Prabhupada just did it.
Okay.
And I do have a very hard stop at 12. So
okay. So you may go straight with the invocation while we put this up on the screen.
Okay, sounds good. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnanjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmitam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Scha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namne Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Pasachare Chatarine Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namne Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shri Tatmane Shri Gaura Krishna Shakti Bhakti. Okay, so we will start off with this verse, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Text 12. Canto 3. Chapter 12, text 31. Teji yasam api yetan na shushlokyam jagadguru yadvritam anushtitan vai lokakshemaya kalpate. Translation. Even though you are the most powerful being, this act does not suit you because your character is followed for all spiritual improvement by people in general. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. It is said that a supremely powerful living entity can do anything and everything he likes, and such act does not affect him in any way. For example, the sun, the most powerful, fiery planet in this universe, can evaporate water from anywhere, and still remain as powerful. The sun evaporates water from filthy places and yet is not infected with the quality of filth. Similarly, Brahma remains unimpeachable in all conditions. But still, since he is the spiritual master of all living entities, his behavior and character should be so ideal that people will follow such sublime behavior and derive the highest spiritual benefit. Therefore, he should not have acted as he did. Text 32. Tasmai namo bhagavate ya idam svena rochisa atmastam vijayam asa sadharmam patum arhati. You can keep on going. I'll skip the translation word for word. Go to the translation. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, who, by his own effulgence, while situated in himself, has manifested this cosmos. May he also protect religion for all goodness. Purport. Lust for sexual intercourse is so strong that it appears herein that Brahma could not be dissuaded from his determination in spite of the appeal by his great sons like Maricha. Therefore, the great sons began to pray to the Supreme Lord for the good sense of Brahma. It is only by the grace of the Supreme Lord that one can be protected from the allurement of lusty material desires. The Lord gives protection to devotees who are always engaged in transcendental loving service. And by his causeless mercy, he forgives the accidental fall of a devotee. Therefore, sages like Maricha prayed for the mercy of the Lord, and their prayer was fruitful. So I was listening to a few of the conversations, a few of the lectures that preceded this. And naturally, this chapter, this verse, or around this section, a lot of people scratch their heads around, right? Because we're talking about the supreme guru of everyone interacting with various types of material manifestations. And when we read it in certain ways, it can seem very disturbing, very confusing, very disturbing. But there's great messages within this story, right? Within this pastime. Now, I was recently having a discussion with a good friend of mine. And what I thought I would do is try to envelope how precious Srimad Bhagavatam is to our day-to-day existence. Because these stories are meant for us to take not just as histories, understanding that they're timeless. And so they're in the past, but they're also here right now, constantly teaching us how to interact with our day-to-day life in order to help us meet the highest goals, or as it said, the summum bonum of existence, which is that action that brings us to our highest intent, our highest goals in life. This last verse that was that they mentioned, they said the word dharma, right? So they said for the good dharma of everyone, or how do they say it? So I'll just pull it up real quick. Yeah. May he also protect religion for all goodness was the actual quote. Now, when we think about dharma, it's the intent, the purpose that a entity has, a function that they have as they are going about their day-to-day existence. And so Srimad Bhagavatam, as we're looking at this chapter, it's extremely beneficial to understand that these personalities are in control of various functions of our day-to-day life. Yesterday's lecture, you guys were talking about chapter 20 in Canto 3 when Brahma was being chased around and things like that. So we're seeing various interactions where Srimad Bhagavatam is constantly saying, hey, look at the life of Lord Brahma. See how he is constantly giving up body after various interactions occur. Some interactions are occurring inside of him, and some interactions are occurring outside of him and then affecting his internal condition. And so it's very interesting. I just started thinking about this chapter and thinking about my conversation with my friend and saying, how would I explain this chapter to him, someone who is from a Christian background and very dogmatically sectarian Christian at that? like one of those, if you don't believe how I believe, you're going to burn in hell for eternity type of friends, right? And so we have a very good relationship. We are very conscious of the way that we approach life. And so I try not to ever broach upon topics that may hurt his faith and his connection to what he deems as the best way he can exhibit his life and his purpose towards God. But naturally, I had to ask a question. After some time, you have to ask a question. And my question to him was, how do you reconcile? And I was just a real question to him, in the same way that we have to reconcile some of these considerations with Lord Brahma, right? We have to have purports, we have to have commentaries, we have to rely on those who have seen, experienced, or from the absolute truth itself, how to interpret these stories properly, these pastimes properly. Now, my question to him was, what do you call, or how do you reconcile the fact that some people, if you truly believe that we only have one life to live and you have eternal heaven or eternal hell within a time period of about 80 years, right? 80 to 100 years, many people much less. How do you reconcile that most people have no clue? Period. In the story, they have no clue which direction to go, right? Some people are going to go because their parents were in that particular faith. And so they were born in, Saudi Arabia, they're Muslim, born in America, predominantly Christian, they're Christian. And you look throughout all of these different civilizations, those who take birth in them, there's a high likelihood that they're going to adopt that practice. I remember Bhakti Tirtha Swami would constantly talk about how people join religions, not because of the philosophy, but because of the way they are treated, right? They want to feel included. They want to feel loved. They want to feel nurtured. There's a whole social aspect to it, right? We see this within Bhakti Yoga. We see this within all religions. There's various impetuses that people use to apply their faith. So it's like, take those aside. Put all those, let's say those are 99% of the population. For one reason or other, they're doing it for certain logical reasons, right? Emotional, logical, etc. I go, but there's always that 1% that have some experience that they consider a divine intervention. And so with that divine intervention, they believe in their hearts that they have communed with God. And due to that divine intervention, or what they consider, again, in this scenario, I wasn't being judgmental on it. I said, it's what that individual jiva considers a divine intervention. Due to that experience, they then commit themselves to that path for the rest of their lives. We see that in Christianity. We see that in all faiths, right? Whether they had cancer, they got cured for cancer, they were crippled and now they're walking, you name it, they have that type of experience and they say, oh, it's because of this, now I'm going to devote my life to that path for the rest of my life. And so I asked him, I said, to me, those scenarios seem a bit unfair if everybody else is just trying to use logic or emotional sentiments. And then we have a small percentage of people that are having experiences that they consider a divine intervention to make their choice. And if the stakes are that high that it's either eternal heaven or eternal hell within a vehicle known as the human body that we will all admit is very faulty and prone to make a ton of mistakes, how do you reconcile that? And through that conversation and hearing him talk, it was, well, first I could tell he hadn't really thought about it, right? But then second, it was, once he heard it, it was as though he started to understand where this question was going, right? And he said to me, he goes, Paul, he goes, why do I, all those other examples, he goes, first, I've never heard of any people outside of Christianity that have, divine interventions, and those who are curing themselves from cancer. If they believe how I believe, then it's real. And if they don't believe how I believe, then it's the devil. Right. And so I go, okay. So I'm like, why would God allow that to happen to certain people? Because we're so limited with our sense perception. We're put on a planet where we have to eat other living entities to live, on a rock that's going around a flaming fireball that could, we're so dependent on so many structures. What do we do? How do we make sense of it? We only have a certain amount of time. We have to feed ourselves. We have to clothe ourselves. We're completely dependent at the beginning, right? We're seeing from this verse how important fathers are in this scenario and the good character of fathers. But it's like we're completely dependent at first. So I'm like, how is it that God would allow Satan to trick people like that when the decisions are that high, the stakes are that high? And after a while, he just put everything on the devil. It's like, but God is allowing the devil to do that, correct? And God is allowing the devil to do that. And I was like, because if not, we're pawns in their hands. And so if somebody, says, hey, if somebody is looking, that's what I gave him. I gave him the example. I was like, say Paul A and Paul B were talking to you. And Paul A had a friend that was Christian, and Paul B had a friend that was Muslim. They both were living wild and did not care about religion at all. Their friend, you in this example, was Christian. Other example is Muslim, and was talking to them saying, hey, you should take to this faith, take God more serious. They end up having a dream that night. And in that dream, whatever their divine figure comes to him and says, hey, by the way, your friend was right. You need to surrender. You need to come to this. This is the path. Now, whether that dream was factual or not, or actual, truly evidence, that person takes that as evidence, and they find themselves trying to do the right thing and apply themselves to the source of all creation. And the answer didn't change much. It was basically the summary was, if they believe like me, then it's real. And if it's not, then they've been tricked by the devil. And as we continue talking, I just started witnessing, and it was interesting because taking association of Srimad Bhagavatam and listening to this process, our basis is Satchidananda in terms of our worldview, our foundation, as Srimad Bhagavatam has so clearly illustrated. But I could see very clearly from his foundational perspective that it was like 1/3 God and 2/3 fire and brimstone, completely within his consciousness. And it was just like, whoa. So it's like you have this one portion that's divine within your consciousness, and everything else is loved ones being tortured forever. And it kind of spooked me a bit. I was like, this is so completely, it was a very dark mindset, dark consciousness. And to think that this type of consciousness cannot reverberate throughout the rest of our existence and throughout the rest of society, we're mistaken. And so during that conversation, he started saying, "Oh, Paul, well, I know you have a different belief than I do," and yada yada. I was like, and I told him, I said, "No, this is not a belief system." I was like, "I'm not a part of a religion. What I'm practicing is a science. Therefore, you can practice it. A Muslim can practice it. Anybody from any walks of life can practice it." And he goes, "Oh, well, but don't you believe in like some people, they have all these gods, and like some people worship the sun." And I say, "Hey, well, the sun is a major controller of our existence, right?" Now, when we think about the qualities of the sun, I want us to do this in a way that, and it's going to tie into the verse, I want us to do this in a way, approach it in a way that Krishna's instructing us to approach it in the Gita when he's describing the modes. And he's saying, when you see certain qualities with your physical eyes, make sure, and it's presented to you by the substance of mind or manas, make sure that you have a good driver at the chariot. So we have to have our intelligence. And our intelligence is what is meant to take the data points that are being given to us by the various demigods within our reality, because they are all controllers of our reality. They're all various states of beings that are allowing us to interface between the external and the internal. And so what I started talking to him about is, for us to even understand that a sun exists, we have to be able to see it. But to be the definition of the sun, it actually has to be a heat-like object within the sky that provides life for all living beings on Earth, and not something that not something that just people in Africa know or any country, but we all are understanding of this concept. And then your parents, grandparents, etc. Every human being understands this concept. That is within their consciousness. This conception is a very, very powerful conception. Srila Prabhupada said in 326, where Kapila is talking about Sankhya Yoga, he says, the fact that Lord Brahma, or the fact that there was a sound vibration and a meaning that was taken from that sound vibration, it should be understood that there is a speaker to that word. There is a speaker to that word. So we see the qualities, we see the gunas, we see these conceptions. And I'm going to use conceptions as a main focal point here during this talk, because that's all we ever experience are these conceptions. And even our human body is made out of nothing but a conception. When we take that data point from the sun, we're feeling the heat. If it's dark outside, we can't see anything. There is no light. Om Jnana Timirandasya, right? We're in darkness. However, once that sun comes out, then we can see forms, right? We can understand that there's this evolutionary process of desire, talked about a lot in chapter 26 of Bhagavatam, and it's also being talked about here, about how various interactions are occurring. And once we have these qualities, we're observing these qualities with our senses, and we're deriving various meanings. But these meanings can be attached to words. And these words we have to ensure that these words are being tied to the proper vehicle that's going to take us to our goal. Now, in order to see these words or to see these concepts properly, we all have to understand that we have a certain level of baggage that we are coming into this experience with. And this baggage are the various modes from previous bodies that we have taken based off of trying to run away from distressful objects and run towards objects of happiness. See, even right there, when I say objects, Srimad Bhagavatam is constantly talking about objects. When Kamsa was about to kill his sister after hearing Narada's say that the eighth son is going to kill you. The words that were used to try to calm him down was talking about how we're dealing with nothing but these five objects in life, right? Talking about the objective side of it, the five senses. But there's all of these objects. Whenever you put the many into a one, we are conceptualizing that existence. So I was telling him that this concept of the sun, we are getting qualities from them. We can distinguish the qualities of the sun versus the qualities of fire versus the qualities of any other experience. We are getting meaning, not just life, but we're getting meaning from them constantly. There is a being that is there. We are understanding that to be there. Yet, it doesn't mean that the sun is the supreme being. But this conversation, this portion of Bhagavatam, I feel is extremely misunderstood by those who are not familiar with this concept of conceptions. And Srila Prabhupada is constantly talking about that. So these are various controllers. So where I was going with him was, I didn't go that in depth with him, but I was saying, hey, these concepts of the sun are the various entities, various qualities. If we're seeing a quality, we have to understand there is a being that is the source of that quality. Now, a lot of times, especially as you know, Krishna Bhaktas, we bypass most of the qualities that are temporary, right? We are hard trained to do that. Now we understand that just like there's a president, he has a whole cabinet that runs the show and a whole administration that runs the show. And that same way, the absolute truth has so many posts of very powerful beings that spread their qualities all throughout existence. And it's only due to our false ego that makes us think that we are the doer. And so these concepts of the sun take us into our concept of the senses. So when we look at the sense of taste, Sahadev, I'll ask you a question actually. So what's your favorite food?
It's a simple but a very tough question, because I don't think I have a favorite food, but if I should consider a favorite food, I would say fufu.
Okay. Nice. That seems like a good blend between a taste that you like, but it's also pretty healthy from what I understand.
Yes.
So that's great, right? And so what we could do is, let's say your baseline, right? Where it's just like, let's say water is your baseline, where it's like, hey, it's so neutral. It's like not good, not bad. That's your equilibrium, right? And your first response was very equipoised, right? Like, hey, don't really have it. I treat all my food equally, you know. But you said, hey, it's fufu, right? So let's put. I'm sure there's some things we want to talk about the highest enjoyment in terms of food now that you taste it. Maybe it's a dessert, but just for this, because we're running out of time, fufu is your, let's call it a 10, right? Fufu with some sweetness on it, if they do that. But that's a 10, right? Let's have 0 being the equilibrium point. And then we have the -10 also, right? What was your worst food? What do you like? You taste it, it's just gonna, Brussels sprouts. Like what is it? And it was probably gonna be something that's.
I say mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. So let's make it rotten mayonnaise, right? Rotten mayonnaise, because we want something that, you know, from a conceptual point of view, what you've experienced as fufu, it has so many qualities that fit the ideal food package. We can put that, for this example, just materially within the ideal category. Now, there could be many different foods that fit within that ideal circle. And then we get to the mayonnaise level. And so there's so many foods that you stack rank, right? you're dissecting, you're labeling, you're discriminating, and then you're ordering, you're prioritizing. And when you're going to a restaurant, when anybody's picking their food, they're automatically doing that due to what? The subtle influences of Raja and Sattva Guna via their subtle body. Now, going to the negative, we have that. So we have this scale of gradation. This is the conceptual romance. So we will put mayonnaise in the outside circle. It's like the impossible. You can't possibly rationalize that mayonnaise is ideal. Like mayonnaise and food, but you just can't. You have to separate it. It's just, that's how it is. Now, the exercise will be done for every sense, right? Your sense of smell. We could do the same thing. Favorite smell. Krishna Shakti, I see you on. What's your favorite sense? I know you do the doTERRA stuff. So what's your favorite doTERRA? What's your favorite?
Oh, she does the doTERRA. Okay.
Geranium right now, geranium and wintergreen. So yeah, geranium.
Wintergreen. Okay. And so and the equilibrium would be when you do not really smell anything. Nothing good, nothing bad is the equilibrium. What's your worst smell? You know, for Bhagavatam we'll keep up. It's probably something rotting also.
Natto, which is like fermented soybean, but super healthy in Japan, but it's like sticky like okra. Super healthy, but the smell is really strong.
Oh, really? Okay. So again, we can put a conceptual map in between those senses, right? Your sense of taste from good to bad. We do this across the spectrum. Do that with every single sense that you have. And you start putting a map on what your perceptual reality, the qualities that you are exhibiting as you deal with various objects. However, Bhagavatam is saying that just like the being, the sun in the sky, or Lord Brahma, you may not see, but you're seeing the qualities of yourself at all moments, even though you have not seen yourself. And therefore you need to do this practice and journey of self-discovery in order to actually see who you truly are. But some people, especially like when I was having that conversation with Christians, they'll say, hey, well, I don't know, I don't see a sun god, It's like, no, you're experiencing all the quality of the sun god right now. To think that that's not a being that has those qualities, you haven't even seen yourself, yet you're saying you have all these qualities. And so every aspect of our senses is an instrument that we are utilizing to dissect reality in various ways. And there's a concept to it. We are given this concept from our previous bodies, but then we're also creating new character. And this verse is talking about vritam, the character that has been developed. And so the sons of Lord Brahma were saying, this is not right, especially with your character and making sure that all these other generations, if they see you enjoying your own creation in an improper way, how will other lesser conceptions who are completely dependent on you being the total conception of all realities within this universe, if you are enjoying your creation improperly, what would other lesser entities be able to do? And so as we look at this, we see Lord Brahma saying, Lord Vishnu has given me a task of creation. And the first verse in this chapter talks about how the previous one was describing time. And so it's understood that when the absolute truth glances at that unmanifested Prakriti, when she has all of the three modes, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, they're all at rest. They're all unmanifested, almost in a state of sleep. Once he looks at Prakriti, then it triggers the time factor. The time factor triggers the activities of all of the jivas with all of their temporary conceptions of life that they are holding on to since time immemorial. So what happens is, hold on one second. Okay, so what happens is Brahma then says the first conception. So when we understand Brahma, we want to look at this from a conceptual point of view as anything that is dependent on a time factor. Brahma is that foundation. Anything that we've experienced, past, present, or future, can be contained within the concept of Brahma. And it says the first thing that he did here is create self-deception. So it's letting us know before you even think about what the truth is, understand if you're under the time factor and you are making any decisions based on the time factor, running around, you have some level of self-deception there. Some level of self-deception is already there. And he was disgusted by it. That disgust, he wanted to figure out a way. Hey, this is not what I intended, or this is something that was just internally he was not happy with. Then he ends up manifesting the four Kumaras. Now the four Kumaras, Sankhya, let me see, I had it right here. Yeah, Sankhya, Yoga, Vigraha, Tapasya. These four Kumaras manifested. And he says, hey, I've been given this duty by the absolute truth to manifest everything within creation, to create all of the concepts that every human being and every animal and every plant and every star and every sun and everything within this creation will have to accept to a certain degree. And the four Kumaras look, all the self-deception, all the tamas everywhere. They're like, nope, want no part of that. We're going to go to the absolute truth. We're not going to create this. This is not a place for us. Lord Brahma has explained that he immediately understood that they were superior to him. At least that's what it says, right? And he restrains his anger. Now, we've all had that where we create something and we want it to work. We want it to work. Like, hey, I did this. I want my plan that I am creating to work. How do we feel when it doesn't work? Right? And so it says that Brahma restrained his anger. So internally, the external object influenced his internal consciousness. With that anger, restraint came through his eyebrows, and a reddish, bluish form took birth. Screaming, howling. And it is said, when you hear that scream, when you hear anyone screaming, you know the root cause of where that came from, what conception that is born out of. You may not even know that person, but you know the meaning. It even says that when you see the anger, when your eyes recognize the anger with the eyebrows, doesn't matter. You know what's going on, where this is coming from, the anger, the frustration. But Lord Shiva actually did, or Rudra actually did what the goal was. He ended up having more progeny. However, these progeny had that same nature that Rudra had, coming from the evolutionary process of Lord Brahma. Boom, boom, boom. And then on the external, it started creating destruction everywhere, to the point where even Lord Brahma said he was fearful. And he had to put the proper perspective of, hey, do penance, recreate everything, but you're gonna be able to do penance, and then your needs, your skill set will be used at a different portion of creation, right? And so there's a major lesson of how any mentors or leaders or father figures, parents, etc., have to understand the nature of the people they are dealing with to best implement the plans and goals and activities of how they're going to interact with their day-to-day existence. But it doesn't stop there. It then discuss how with that anger, we have the next step. And who can tell us what was created next from after Rudra? So it was the sons, the Manas Putras. From the mind, 10 sons were manifested. Now, what's interesting about this is when you really look at a lot of the suns and the Sanskrit names, they deal with light and fire. And so we see the previous pastime of Rudra, and then we see Marichi. Marichi actually means a ray of light. And his considered consort is time. And so it's representing the mind of Lord Brahma, and saying, hey, what should we do? How is this behavior? Right? So it starts going through this whole process where Marichi, Atri, not the three. Tri, Atri. So it's beyond the three modes. His consort, Anasuya, free from spite or envy, responsible for the Rig Veda. Then we had Angira, descendant of fire, the essence of intelligence. Because what were we saying? We're saying if we're going to guide the mind and the intelligence and the data points that we're getting and trying to prioritize, what should our goal be today? I have to eat, I have to sleep, I have to somehow keep, the house together. How do I prioritize this as time is eating all of my previous bodies away? So every time we see Brahma is giving up his bodies, and many of us still think that we're going to keep this body for one lifetime. But we should understand that every time we have a thought, an idea, a movement, that is a different body. Not only is it different because we're moving through a space and time, and literally every second's a different body, but even the processes that we're doing internally are completely different bodies. And we're holding on to these false conceptions of self. And so we then have Pulatya, coming from the ear, the source of all vibrations, right? The source of all meaning. And it says that from Angira, he was actually the father of Brihaspati. And his consort is Shraddha. Also Smriti and Svada. Svada is the offering. And so from Angira, we see that there's that sense of how do we guide through the darkness? Pulatya, one who abides in the ear, and then his consort is Havirbu, born of sacrifice, father of Agastya and Vishrava, sorry. Then we have Pulaha, which means the navel, coming from the navel, one who makes flow or vibrate. His consort, Kshama, or patience. Kratu is the hand, the will or sacrifice when you break down the Sanskrit meaning. Consort, Sanati, humility. He's the father of the sages that help the sun. Vashishta, next, breath, the excellence of wealth. His consort, Arundhati, restraint. And so we're seeing these masculine, feminine polarities, or the energy and the energetic, the story continuously manifesting. And so it's saying that from this evolutionary process that has occurred, from Angira, Vak, manifest, speech manifest. Now, when we see this, we understand that what Bhagavatam is telling us is when we're looking at how our own creation process happens, we are being triggered in so many ways by the three modes. And this process doesn't just happen in a silo, in an isolated condition. It's happening through that ripple vibration, the whole chitta vritti. It's you drop that rock in the infinite water and it starts to create ripple effects. You drop more, those crisscrosses begin to happen, various forms, various shapes, all different, all unique, all coming from this one source. And so it's interesting. I like this comparison. So I was comparing the second, this chapter, chapter 12 to chapter 26. And what happens is the second verse are very interesting, because the second verse of this chapter, it talks about that fog, the self-deception. But then when you look at Bhagavatam, where they're explaining the 26th verse chapter, they go, knowledge is the ultimate perfection of self-realization. I shall explain that knowledge unto you, by which the knots of attachment to the material world are cut. And so they're explaining how this nescience of us thinking that, hey, I am this, I am that. We went through some of the examples of looking at how every one of our five senses, we can do it with the ego, the mind, intelligence, and understand that we can map all of this out within that same factor of conceptual understanding. And I would advise everybody to try to do that, because then you can very clearly see that you are none of those. One exercise, if we had enough time, would be to look at yourself when you were a kid and map out from an ego perspective, what was the false sense of self? Again, we don't have to say false right now, but what was the sense, the temporary self that you were looking at? What was its likes? What was its needs? What did it consider its family at that time, friends at that time, happiness? What made that person happy at that time? If you're old enough, go 10 years more, 10 years more, you can map this out and start seeing that the worries, the goals, and everything else that's associated with the ego have changed to various degrees. Not all the time, but to various levels. There's various things that change, and that is that conception. Every time, that is a different body that we're dealing with. So so Brahma is showing us, hey, give up these temporary conceptions. Give it up. Give it up. It's not worth it. But there's a lot of controversy, right? Because it said that, hey, Brahma looked, right? So he's now he has the fire of Rudra, and all of a sudden we're starting to see a lot of passion within Brahma. Now, naturally, we understand Brahma is unimpeachable, as explained, right? Just like the sun, I think it's a great example. The sun is never contaminated by drying up water on the ground. Just it's completely independent. You can't exhaust it. And so that's how Brahma is. He's completely pure, but he's letting us know this is how the matrix that you're under is created, where the chest is the seat of religion, and that seat has the absolute truth on it. And from his back is irreligion, with death right there, waiting for all living entities who are experiencing the time factor. Now, I find it interesting because it says in the 26th chapter that once the sound vibration occurs, that breaks between it's all due to lust, and it actually goes into from the Rajaguna into the more tamasic mode. So it's a devolution that is describing into the physical. But then I started thinking, I'm like, we have very strong the energy and the energetic, right? Where we can look at the sun and say it's one sun in the sky. However, with our intelligence, we can see that there's the sun and then there's the sunshine. One, but different. And so these Shaktis, these energies, I wanted to share some of the consorts. So as we listen to these timeless histories, we can associate them with our current day-to-day activities, as Lord Brahma is teaching us every single day how to address this. Now, I do feel like there's one pastime I want to share from the Devi Purana, if you guys will allow me to, where it was, the place was between Lord Vishnu with Ganga, Saraswati, and Lakshmi. And one time, Ganga was looking at Vishnu with sidelong glances. Vishnu ends up seeing and was a little startled and smiled back, right? Pleasantly smiled back. At that moment, Saraswati, wife of Vishnu, a consort of Vishnu, said, again, remember, Saraswati, mode of passion. So she's exhibiting the qualities within this pastime for us to understand. And she said, why are you trying to be prideful, Ganga, and exhibit how good your relationship is with Lord Vishnu? And starts going in like that. And Lord Vishnu is looking, and she actually starts chastising Lord Vishnu and saying, hey, you're supposed to be Sattvic, but people who are Sattvic would never favor any of their wives. And it looks like you're favoring someone right now. And matter of fact, it looks like you favor Lakshmi and Ganga more than me. And that's not right. And so Lord Vishnu doesn't react, listens to her, and walks away. At that point, Mother Saraswati then goes even further with Ganga and starts to reprimand her to the point where she starts cursing and says, hey, for this, you will have to take birth as a river. And then she starts chastising Lakshmi also and says, and I don't know why you're standing there not saying anything. You know, obviously you both are Sattvic, I'm Rajasic, and you guys are being favored. You guys are like one team against me. And because you saw the sidelong glances of Ganga, and Lakshmi did not react. And actually Lakshmi tried to pacify Saraswati. And she says, hey, I will now also curse you to be a tree, because a tree is silent, a river silent. You're not saying anything. Well, I'm not being treated properly. So therefore, become a tree on planet Earth. Now, at that point, Vishnu comes back and embraces Saraswati. It says he put her to his chest and said, we should never have people of different natures together in a place is never productive. It's never productive. But he whispered to her the mystery of this pastime. And they all understood what was going on. And he instructed Saraswati to become the wife of Brahma. And so I find that story is very interesting, especially coming to this pastime, because without the intelligence of Brahma, conceptions, the reason why conceptions I feel are so important is because you take the many and you can put it into one ideal. And so with this conception, we're seeing that in the same way Lord Brahma is intertwined with Saraswati, because we see even once Brahma kidnaps the cowherd boys, he appears with Saraswati. He is like the sun and the sunlight with Saraswati, because speech itself, and in that pastime I skipped over due to time, but it was talking about the speech of Saraswati. That was actually Ganga's critique of Saraswati, was speech, especially materialistic speech, meant for complications, quarrels. However, a word, every concept that we have can be placed within one word, just like all of the concepts of creation can be placed within one word, Brahma. So all speech is tied into something. It has a root to something. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the 26th chapter, is saying it's from these various fluctuations of the interactions of the mode that speech, which was the sound of lust itself, then manifests and creates space itself, which evolves into touch, sight, taste, earth, or smell. And so these are inextricably linked, but every word that we are experiencing is a conception, is a state of being as we are interacting with it. And so we first started talking about how our consciousness are constantly trying to deal with the various ripples of how we run away from the objects, the conceptions of happiness, and the temporary conceptions of, distress are all placed within this one conception of Brahma. But Srimad Bhagavatam is constantly telling us that every conception has to rest upon the absolute truth as that very foundation, that eternal foundation that is there. So whether it's real or imagined, temporary, fake, etc., it all has to take place within that energy of the absolute truth, or it won't exist at all. And so Brahma is that conception of creation. Naturally, as the Kumars were telling everybody, use tapasya, yoga, sankhya. Use these components in order to go beyond Brahma's creation and attach your true self to Krishna. And that conception of Krishna is that conception that holds all conceptions, both eternal and temporary, but in a way that is so sweet that all of the energies, all of the Shaktis are automatically already embedded in itself. That's why that verse, when things are not going our way, or the goals that we have are not going our way, or things are making us frustrated, we should always try to have proper character, understanding that these vibrations extend all throughout existence, all throughout our own consciousness, affecting how we will see future objects in the future. So we want to have good character. We want to set up systems like Varnashram as much as possible in order for us to block and shelter us from various tamasic, rajasic, and even sattvic interactions, right? We want to transcend. So we want to create that barrier around us as much as possible, because these actions and reactions affect everything. It's like just ricocheting off of each other. And so he's saying, look at that conception that can hold everything, but not just hold everything. Because we don't want to stop ourselves with some type of impersonal conception, but look at it as that which you yourself have been experiencing life day and night in your dreams. How has this occurred? Who is allowing this? Who else is witnessing this? And so that's the absolute truth that's ultimately there. Conscious, fully conscious in regards of Sat, Chit, and Ananda. And so Narada Muni is telling us, hey, how do we get to a spot where you're looking for that temporary happiness, but you're meant for eternal happiness? And it's saying, look at the absolute truth. Look at that truth that contains all, not just temporary conceptions, but in its most ideal form. So the ideal form that has all flavor, all beauty, all knowledge, all renunciation, all opulence, all strength. And it's possessed inherent to him, situated in himself. And so when he's looking at existence from the existence of the absolute truth, then it's Ananda. And so Narada Muni is saying, take all of these instruments, your 5 instruments of experiencing reality with your subtle body, nothing but instruments. Take all these instrumental conceptions and use them in the service of the absolute truth, Sri Krishna. And everything is there, but in the most ideal form, in the most ideal conceptions that we can ever experience. And that is what Srimad Bhagavatam is. It is that lifeline for us to get out of this temporary existence where people are being killed on trains. So it's I know we're at time right now, so just to summarize, when we're looking at these verses, we want to make sure we're taking into account that the role of a teacher, the role of a father, the role of a parent, the role of anyone who's going to be providing guidance is so important. not just at the universal level, not just at the societal level, but within your own individual life. But not just what people can see externally, but also what association you are taking within your mind, what conceptions you are allowing to reside within your mind, what conceptions you're using to help prioritize your life. And naturally, Srimad Bhagavatam is saying, go for the best, go for the sweetest, go for the joy. But understand the way you do this is through service, is through understanding that all of these temporary conceptions that we are experiencing have nothing to do with you, but are all the pastimes of the absolute truth. And as soon as we are able to link into that, then we can spiritualize all of the instruments that we are experiencing. So we're no longer running away from life, running away from existence. We are diving deep into the world of Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you very much. I know I'm at time. I think I have 15 minutes because nobody's texted me. So.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, PRABHU. Wow. I was looking through something here. Let me see if I have it here. Yes, I do. Let me share. When you were speaking, I was listening to you keenly, and you reminded me of certain people. We call them weavers. You know, you see, this is beautiful kente cloth.
Oh, nice.
And there are people. These are hand woven clothes, and they look very elegant. And I was just thinking how you were able to weave what we read from these two verses and the purpose, and then you brought about the modes and the different characters we exhibit externally and what is stored internally, which eventually comes out externally, and the role of leadership and what is amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Yes, actually, I forgot to land the plane on one point. So with the conceptions, the reason why the concept of conception is so powerful, because it's one word, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why the concept of Krishna is the all in all, because it is a complete existence right there within that conception. But it's the sweetest conception, right? I was recently looking at I'll stop because
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was recently, somebody gave me a book, some Buddhist book about meditation, and I was reading it and I was like, what do the Buddhists do? And naturally trying to think about how I can improve my japa and control the crazy mind. And I was like, what techniques do they have? And it's so interesting because they talk about an object of meditation, but they don't really acknowledge any type of, absolute truth in that sense. And so I'm like, what are they meditating on? Right. And then I started looking at it and it's just like, okay, so they're meditating on the breath. And then you look at the impersonal processes and it's just like, okay, so what are they meditating on? How are they taking the mind? How are they applying the senses? And it's so out there. Then it's just like, you look at Srimad Bhagavatam and it's like, no, here is the ideal conception of reality. Here is the ideal conception. And how can you meditate on not just anything, but the sweetest thing? It's literally the most ideal sweet. And so when we're looking at those conceptions of what's your favorite food, naturally you're at a 10, right? It's a 10, but then you can't go past a 10 because at a certain point, the human conception just can't take it, right? But naturally, there's higher pleasures of eating. There's higher rasas. There's higher satisfactions, and there's also an infinite. And that infinite is a conception that is known as Krishna, that contains it all. And that's where I was trying to land the plane. But it's one word, but it contains it all, and it's complete.
So thank you so much. Dear devotees, if anyone may have questions, comments, reflections, realizations you may want to ask or share, please indicate by using the hand emoji or your physical hand, and you'll be asked to unmute to ask your question or share your reflections. I also want to remind devotees, we should be mindful our speaker has about 12 minutes left with us. So if you have questions, please don't hesitate. Go ahead and then ask right away. Krishna Shakti Devi, please, you may unmute and go ahead to ask your question. Hare Krishna.
Okay, well, first I want to thank you for solving a problem that I did not realize I had when I cooked for someone in Japan and I added mayonnaise to the meal and they said, Africa. So I really appreciate that because I was just like, oh, I was like, I thought I was adding something that you would appreciate. Nope. So now I understand. But yes, no, this is awesome. Thank you for the wonderful class. It was really beautiful to see, as Sahadev said, how you interwove the different concepts. And I just wanted to know how you're actually, I love like the idea, and how has the idea of concepts helped you in your Krishna consciousness and just conceptualizing how you deal with things? Because I feel like it's a nice, intricate methodology, or just like different way of perceiving what we already know, but it's nicely packaged in a way that seems to be pretty tangible and helpful and useful. So just how do you apply it in your own life, or how do you feel like it's helped you go deeper in your Krishna consciousness?
One thing, thanks for that question. Thanks for joining. Well, it helps when you have a sister that's teaching you about reincarnation at the age of 4. But it's one experience that I had that really catapulted me in this direction. Again, I do look at it as a conscious unfoldment, right? And it's Krishna's providing a path that works for me, and he's going to provide a path that works for every unique individual based off of the contaminations that they have and their natures. But for me, there was a time when I had to make a very hard decision, and whether I would take a job or not. But this was during a time period when, to take the job, I would have to do some things I didn't want to do. And I had to stand by my principles and turn down the job, which would have been a lot of money. And growing up, you know, I would have appreciated it. But I had to turn it down because I could see that it wasn't right. But I was a little depressed afterwards. And I was just like, oh man, did I make the right choice? And, you know, just kind of going back and forth when you have a life-changing decision like that. I had to make it. And, you know, due to the association of devotees and friendships and things like that, I was out somewhere where they were playing Karmi music. I was with my family, and all of a sudden these songs started popping on the radio wherever I was at. And they were all very much addressed to my situation that I was going through, like back to back. So the first 2 songs, like, oh, what a coincidence. Third song, I was like, interesting. And then the 4th song was a song that a friend recommended to me that I hadn't heard really or paid attention to. And it was, I Just Want to Live My Life Alive. And with that, due to the devotee who was talking to me about that song, it immediately switched my consciousness. I went from depressed to so grateful and amazed. And then I started feeling out, and it was just like, it was a very internal experience. And I was trying to figure out, how did I go from sad to happy, but not just happy, but it was almost as though I was tasting nectar. You know, it was like I was experiencing something inside. It was as though I was in a dark room, and I opened up a door and it was filled with milk and honey. Is how I would describe it. And I could taste it though. I was actually experiencing it. And I was very perplexed by it. And I started going, how is this possible? And the realization came was, oh, I'm living by my principles. And at that moment, I was actually falling in love with myself by standing on principles. But then I was just like, okay, but why does that work? Who cares, right? But then I started to realize that, oh, those principles that I was standing on are nothing but fragments of reflections of that most ideal person. So I'm not really falling in love with me, I'm falling in love with that most ideal. And that like really ironed into my consciousness at that moment. And as I started looking in, then I started seeing how, oh, this is structuring within that ideal framework, and how applicable the concepts of the ideal, the possible to the impossible are very clearly shown within the three modes. But if we, I was telling you about that circle, but that center dot, as Srila Sridhar Swami says in his Guru and His Grace, that Krishna is the direct center of all of existence. So all of our activities, even if we're not able to see it or comprehend it, is guiding us, and it's our job to try to show it. And to that degree we move closer to that ideal is to the degree that we'll like experience more satisfaction within life. So I hope that helps.
Wow. Thank you so much. Krishna Shakti Devi, are you okay with the response?
Yeah, that was beautiful. Got a new story that I hadn't received before, so that was awesome.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. Anyone else with something to ask? Prabhuji, I have this question. You see, we all see flowers, and when we see flowers, we appreciate it, but we don't really think so deeply about it. But if someone is a horticulturist, he sees a flower, the way he looks at it is different from everyone else. If someone is an auto mechanic, when he hears the sound of an engine of a car, the way he understands it may be different from an ordinary person. So if someone is a psychologist, psychiatrist, he deals with the mind. So when the mind is telling that particular individual to do or say something, he thinks twice, maybe tries quadruple times before he acts on them. Now, you were talking about the intricacies of these three modes of material nature. And like you were saying, talking to your friend, you were telling him that you do not follow any religion. What you practice is science. So as a scientist, knowing these three modes of material nature, and we know how complicated they are. In fact, I was just reading something from Srila Prabhupada 2 days ago, and Srila Prabhupada was, actually we read it from the class here. Srila Prabhupada was saying the three modes are always together. So even someone is very ignorant, he still has some mode of goodness in him. So my question then is, how do we, supposedly scientists of these material modes of nature, are oftentimes unable to understand how these modes work in order to avoid the traps of these modes? But oftentimes we become victimized by these modes. So how we're supposed to be scientists of these intricate modes, but oftentimes we get hit. We get hit by these modes. I mean, I wouldn't say we, but I'll say me. I'm supposed to be a scientist, but I get hit by this all the time. Bhagavad Gita 259, 60, 61, 62, 63 gives us all the like scientific step by step how we get allured. I know all these things. We all know the liquid beauty. We all know these things, yet we get hit very harshly in the face. Boom. What do we need to do? Or what are we supposed to do that we're not doing?
Yes. That's a great question. Great question. And There's so many ways to address, but first I think we need to maintain a sense of extreme humility from, especially as inspiration from this verse and even the pastimes I was sharing between Saraswati and Lakshmi. Extreme humility, where they, in these pastimes, didn't know exactly what Lord Vishnu was thinking. But what's one of the main common themes that Vishnu exhibits? He stays equipoised. He doesn't let the pullings of these various items affect him, even if somebody tests him and kicks him in the chest. And then you see Lakshmi in that story between Saraswati when they were having that fight. She didn't react. And Lord Vishnu mentioned, he said, I'm going to stay with Lakshmi because we're of the same nature. And so we have to be very maniacal in the way that we look at what is residing within our consciousness. When we see it of a certain frequency, when we see that it is not of a certain nature, we have to question, where did this come from? How did this come about? What activities am I doing to enforce more of this activity? Analyzing it through that. And then also our practices are so important. Our japa meditation, as we're trying to apply our consciousness to the mantra, to Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. As we're letting this mantra flow through us from a place that we're unable to sense, that I'm unable to grab a hold of yet. I'm understanding that, man, this mind is always jumping all over the place, all over the place. It's everywhere. It wants to look at the phone, it wants to look here, it wants to think about this. But understanding, even if I'm having a bad day and I'm feeling sad or feeling happy, is all of these things. All those are all the temporary conceptions that can be put aside and put into a box called temporary conceptions. And then understand, how can we stay with those eternal conceptions? And then link all of those other temporary into the eternal to become spiritualized. But then also, that's the internal portions of it. And we can go on all day about that one. But then also making sure that we have the external. So what's also interesting about this verse is after Brahma created his mind-born sons, after that happened, now he couldn't just enjoy how he wanted. He now had accountability. His sons were now, he had to be accountable to his sons, right? And his sons were then trying to correct his behavior. So he didn't have his free will the way he wanted it before, right? Or during this pastime. And so the external factors, what type of sons can we put in place that have the good conscience of Lord Brahma's sons? How can we have Marichi and Atri and the four Kumars help us to access this knowledge that goes beyond this temporary sphere? And so that's why Varnashram is so important. That's why the conception of parental, friends, and all of these various objects and desires and interactions that we have, as much as we can place objects there, people there, beings there that are attached or trying to become attached very enthusiastically to this divine service, then that's going to also reverberate back to us. And so we want to shelter ourselves as much as possible with good association internally, most importantly, externally also, by getting that mercy. But at the same time, as we deal with various aspects of forgetfulness, of self-deception, of self-sabotage, we have to detach ourselves also from those emotions, right? We have to understand that even our emotional states are nothing but conceptions. I feel happy, I feel sad, I feel depressed, I feel this, I feel that. These are all conceptions. If you are seeing it, if you are witnessing it, and it's not a part of that divine reality, understand it to be in the temporary realm, and you should give up that body. And so that whole die before dying, we're doing it anyway, but most of us are doing it and just taking another mode of ignorance, mode of passion, mode of goodness, and keeping that cycle. But let's continuously realize that as we're experiencing, as we're seeing these pastimes unfold within our own life, that we are not a part of that. This is nothing but Krishna's Leela. This is nothing but Lord Vishnu's enjoyment with his energies. And we're witnessing it and saying, oh, this is me, this is me, this is me. No, just take a step back. But I do feel that our japa and our meditation helps us to figure out and see we're trying to focus here, yet all of these other distractions are occurring. Who's in control? Understanding that these are the various devas and asuras that are having their own leelas, right? Yeah, we talk about Krishna all the time, but there's the whole cabinet of the government's there, making sure everything stays in line. And many times we're mistaking their behavior for our behavior, or thinking, oh, this is us. It's not us. Every moment is not us. And that way, it's like, I do agree with the Buddhists in the sense of these are all false conceptions. They're all not us. But there is a us there that is beyond those conceptions that we should try our best to attach ourselves to.
Wow. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Do you have time for one more question?
Okay, yeah, 5 minutes and I really have to go.
Okay. So Hamsadutta Prabhu, please you may unmute.
Hare Krishna, Your Grace.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for the wonderful class. I really appreciate you. And I want to take this opportunity to thank His Grace, Isvara Prabhu, yesterday, because the explanation he gave yesterday and today, how you explain these chapters answers a lot of my questions. And I really appreciate that. I have one question, but this question will take more than 5 minutes. So I think I will let it go. Yeah, because I don't want to, for what you are giving us now is so amazing. So I don't want to take more of your time, but I will try to share with the senior devotees if they can give me some answers. So thank you so much. And thank you once again for staying back in Gitanagri when I asked you to stay when I was taking initiation.
Oh, I feel so blessed
but
being there.
you still stay for me. So I'm so blessed and thank you so much for being there for me. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
No, thank you. I was so blessed by being there. I was so happy Krishna arranged for me to be there. And I hope I didn't contaminate it too much. By the way, you see, the mind is tricky. That question, by you not asking, I'll be thinking about it all day now.
It's a very deep question concerning what you shared, but it will take a lot of time to explain this. And
okay.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to be
maybe you can. I still want to hear it. If you can share it with Sahadev, maybe you can text me or something.
Yes. I will share. I will share it. So.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, dear devotees. We're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute. Of course, before we do that, Shri PALAKA Prabhu, do you have a concluding remark to make before we bring this to a final close?
Just try to get as much sadhu sangha as you can.
Yeah. That is one blessing. I will say Shri Guru Krishna has given us. There are quite a few devotees here who are very consistent. They're always here and sharing and giving it the association, which is the most important thing in devotional life. So we also thank you for giving us the association today, and we hope to have more of your association in the years and the months and the days ahead. With that being said, devotees, we're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute yourselves, and we all with one love, sweet note, chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra to express our deepest appreciation to our revered speaker for today, His Grace PALAKA Prabhu, for sharing his love and wisdom with us all. Jai! Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Hare
Rama Rama, Hare
Rama,
Hare.
Hare Hare.
Panchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripasinubhyavacha,
Patinaam Pavanabhyo
Vaishnavadhyana
Vaishnavabhyo Namo
Oh,
Namaha.
Namo Namaha.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Jai
All glories to His
Thank you very
Grace
much.
Palaka Prabhu ki jai. All glories to Jagat Guru Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
All
Yes, sir.
Vaishnava devotees ki
Good
jai.
seeing your
Hare Krishna.
faces.